But whether someone calls themselves a shaman or a medicine person, Bearhart studied with his teachers for 16 years. So I've always been very uncomfortable with people who call themselves medicine people or shaman who have taken a few workshops.
Or read a book.
Or read,
Right.
Yeah. But the other thing about it, which I think is more significant, is because I also teach classes in energy healing.
Okay.
And what I teach my students is that when you embark on the path of practicing energy healing, you are embarking on a path of self-healing, because you have to clear up your own emotional baggage and your issues in order to be a clean, clear vehicle for healing energy to come through you from the divine to your client. In fact, the analogy I like to use, because it does come from Native Americans, is this analogy of becoming a hollow bone, meaning you are empty. You don't have any of your own judgments or opinions or emotional issues. There's no anger. You just become a neutral vehicle. And you have to work very hard and do a lot of work on yourself to reach that point.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, so you might be able to take some workshops to, then somebody says, well, you can call yourself a shaman now, but have you done the personal work to clean yourself out so you can truly be a hollow bone? And again, it took Bearhart 16 years, and he was a very powerful healer.
Wow. So one of the things, talking about energy, one of the things that you say you believe contributes to life in balance is that everything and everyone is connected by an invisible web of love, life, breath, and compassion. And you say quantum physicists call it the field. Explain that to us.
Oh, I'd love to. I just love this concept so much. First of all, Native Americans have always taught, they have a term, in fact, among the Sioux tribe, who also call themselves the Lakota, they have a prayer that they say all the time. It is Mitakwiasin, which translates to, we are all related. It means, everything is my relative. I'm not greater or less than a blade of grass, a tree, a bird, a plant. Everything is related. And you can't do an act of violence or harm to another individual or plant or animal without also doing harm to yourself, because we are all related and interconnected. In the past few decades, quantum physicists have been doing enough research to determine that, yes, we are all related. One beautiful theory that's come out is called the butterfly effect. And for those of you who might not have heard of it, the butterfly effect says that if a butterfly flaps its wings in South America, it sets off a movement of molecules. It sets off another movement of molecules. It keeps changing the air currents and it can ultimately affect the weather in Europe. Now, when this was first presented as a PhD dissertation, I think in the 1970s in New York, the person, Edward Lorenz, he was laughed off the stage. But years later, physicists discovered, you know what? That's true, and it's now called, it's a law, it's called the law of sensitive dependence on initial conditions. So anything we do, any act we take, does impact the world around us. And that invisible web of energy that interconnects everything, physicists call it the field. And it's what Native Americans have been talking about for millennia, saying we are all interconnected and related.
So I have got to ask you this, okay? And then now this might sound kind of crazy, but I believe for the most part everything you just said. And again, I can't remember the guy who came into the store, but when he said that he believed that I was once a part of the Sioux tribe. And so when you say that you can not harm another being or anything, right? I am a firm believer of that, except when it comes to, like, in South Carolina, we have these things called palmetto bugs, okay? And I am so serious, Molly. I am dreadfully afraid of these things. They look like giant cockroaches that can fly. And that is like my worst fear, a flying bug. And so if I see one, I cannot imagine myself recognizing it as we're connected. It's like I look at this thing and freak out. So what would someone like me who I aspire to get to that place of peace and connectedness. But I'm telling you, if I'm in meditation, if I'm doing yoga and I see that bug, it breaks everything. I'm getting out of that room. I can't do it. So what is that saying? I mean, what do you say to people like that who kill bugs?
Well, when you start to have an awareness of the fact that we're all related, when I find a bug in my house, I don't love bugs. I mean, really, I won't touch one.
Right.
But when I find a bug in my house, I will capture it, like put a glass jar over it, and then slide a piece of paper under it, and I will take it outside.
Oh, these things are too fast for that.
Oh. Well, you know what? That leads me to another very interesting topic, which is that, you know what, maybe there's nothing wrong with killing it if it's, upsetting you and you're afraid of it. And because in our culture, in the United States, in Western culture, we have a very unhealthy view towards death.
Okay, explain that.
Well, okay, I'm 100% Irish.
Okay.
And so I've studied my Celtic ancestry, and the Celts have a saying, death is the middle of a long life.
Right.
If you understand or believe that the soul is immortal, the physical body is just a temporary vessel.
Right.
And people tend to get very afraid of death because they think that when they leave their physical body, that's the end.
That's the end, that's right.
But if they're going back into a never-ending stream of consciousness and love and light, it's not the end. Either they will stay. Years ago I asked Bearhart, do Native Americans believe in reincarnation? And all he said was, yes. Sometimes he would give me cryptic answers and just rely on me to figure out
exactly
what he was saying.
Which I believe is the best teacher, by the way.
Yeah.
Not giving you the answers, but allowing you to find them, yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So what I came to realize was that it didn't matter in terms of whether they believed in reincarnation. It didn't matter whether or not a person came back into a physical body, because Native Americans, most of the ones I've met, believe that when we leave the physical body, we become an ancestor or perhaps a positive spirit guide to help along those members of our family or our friends who are still in physical bodies who might need some help, or like guardian angels. Mm-hmm. So we leave a physical body and we go into a form where we can still provide some assistance, and we can be prayed to, and requests can be made of us. So whether they're in a physical body or not, we still have a soul that is eternal.
That is just so powerful. I'm talking to you and I'm thinking about my grandmother, because my grandmother actually was half white and half Cherokee. And she married my grandfather, who was a very, very, very dark-skinned black man. But when people see pictures of my grandmother, I remember my great-grandmother, she died when I was about 9. But I remember her so well, and I remember the bag that she would carry around her neck and her hair. I just remember this beautiful silver hair. And it's so unfortunate, because at the time when my mom and my uncles and stuff were growing up, anything that dealt with the Native American was considered taboo, or it was just, a really bad experience. And then not only that, but during that time, being African American wasn't that much better either. But at some point, Native Americans, they really suffered, as well as African Americans. So a lot of things that my grandmother would want to discuss or whatever, her children wasn't open or receptive to it. they didn't want to talk. It was more like there was a shame that came with it. That was interesting.
Yeah, and that's very sad. I know that was very common, actually.
Yeah, and you know, of course, I didn't realize any of this until I got older. But as a child and as a teenager, you kind of like but you don't know. And then when you become an adult, it's like, oh, that's what that was all about, you know? And it's unfortunate because I have no cultural understanding of the group that my grandmother belonged to. And yet, like I said, I've always had these visions and these dreams, particularly of this particular Native American man that I don't know who he is or whatever, but he would come in my dreams a lot. So that was interesting to me too, but I never ever connected any of the dots, you know. So listening to you talk it's kind of like bringing back those memories that were kind of buried really deep.